Hey everyone, geophysicist Stefan Burns here. We are right now in a huge wave of solar activity. Sunspots have leapt to over 200, which is a high water mark for this entire solar cycle maximum. We had a monthly high of 216 last August. Now we're back to 200 on the daily count. We'll see if that maintains. Some big sunspots on the Earth-facing side of the sun, as you can tell here. More to rotate in, and they are growing. So specifically 4197 there is actively growing and becoming almost like a monster sunspot now. It's getting closer and closer day by day, though they haven't been releasing big solar flares. It's like they're in this growth phase, but not in a release phase yet. Well, part of the energy that they are releasing is solar microwave radio flux. And so these are frequencies in the megahertz to gigahertz range. And we get this increase naturally in solar radio flux, as it's known, every solar cycle and every solar maximum. So the normal part of the light spectrum for the sun, this is infrared, visible, ultraviolet light, changes very, very little from solar minimum to solar maximum. But when you go to solar maximum, you have a big increase in radio frequency flux, which is this solar radio flux that we discuss about. And then also you have a big increase in extreme ultraviolet and X-ray flux from the sun. And that's specifically generated mostly by these sort of solar flares, which these sunspots could do. Well, this big increase in solar radio frequency flux, after having bottomed out very, very low, is indicating that there is a lot of energy being pumped into the Earth right now. And because it is a lower frequency than infrared or like X-ray flux, all those, it's fairly low in frequency, it penetrates very deep into the Earth. It's also specifically in that frequency zone that gets absorbed very easily by water. Of course, we know that the Earth contains a tremendous amount of water in the atmosphere, more in the oceans, and there's actually a lot of water in the crust and in the mantle. So we have this energy coming in from the sun that is causing this thermal expansion of the Earth, and what we see is that there's this interesting trend and rhythm between deep earthquake activity and then high magnitude earthquakes. They seem to follow kind of one another. You get a burst of deep earthquakes, and then there is a lag, and then it seems, at least for 2025 thus far, then we get these high magnitude earthquakes. We also see a really close correlation between solar wind density and high magnitude earthquakes. We're going to look at that data. So it just seems in general, because this new impulse of solar energy, not only do we have an increased risk of powerful solar storms, which can trigger radio blackouts on the sunlit side of the Earth, right? Those photons hit the Earth 8.3 minutes later, boom, radio blackout. That disrupts communication across a variety of industries. It also has geophysical effects. We also have an increased risk of solar storms from any coronal mass ejections that may launch from that Earth direct position. This is going to be in that strike zone in just a couple of days. And it also looks like we are building up to another big wave of seismic energy because of this dramatically increased solar radio flux. So let us get right into it with our data. I crunched the data today. So this is live. We're looking at it in real time, folks. Here we see our cumulative seismic energy release for earthquakes in August of 2025. This is all the energy released from earthquakes stacked on top of each other day by day. So that's why it's only going up, okay? Here we see our weighted average daily earthquake depth for August of 2025. And so what this is looking at all earthquakes magnitude 4.5 and greater. Of course, each one has a depth. And so you take the seismic energy released from that earthquake based on the magnitude, and you use that as a weighting factor for the depth that it occurred at. Because you could have a magnitude 3 earthquake at a super deep depth, but if there's a magnitude 5, the energy release from that is much higher, about 100 times higher. So you shouldn't weight them the same, right? You need to apply a weighting factor. So I did that. So here, this is the most important thing. Here we see that our average depth weighted for August was hovering in this like 25 to 75 zone. That's actually kind of a little bit of a pulse wave right there. But in general, it's right around like actually maybe 20 to 50, right? And look at how it just recently increased. So this is the 21st of August. And we had a big earthquake on the 21st. This is that magnitude 7.5 south of South America. Drake Passage earthquake. See that huge bump in the cumulative seismic energy release? That's all from that magnitude 7.5. This is a logarithmic scale here. So this increase in energy is not the same as this, because this is going from 10 to the 2 to 10 to the 3 gigawatt hours. This is 10 to the 4, further up. After the 21st, look at how all of a sudden our deep earthquake activity increased. This is on a global scale. So we've had deep earthquakes in South America, we've had deep earthquakes in Tonga and like near Fiji, we've had deep earthquakes in and around Japan. Some of these zones that get deep earthquakes, they've been having them, and we've been having more of them. After that 7.5, we really haven't had any significant activity, but these lower magnitude earthquakes that we have been having, this is magnitude 4s and 5s, there's been a huge increase in the amount of them that have been happening at depth. So that's what's been happening for August. Someone commented on the fact that we've been having more deep earthquakes on Twitter X. They tagged me at Stefan Burns Geo. I post a lot of intermittent updates there if you'd like to stay up to date in between my YouTube videos. And so I looked into it and I was like, okay, this is interesting. So now let us look at our earthquakes energy versus depth for all of 2025. And this is also very, very interesting. So this is where the trend gets a little wild. Here we see our data going from January 1st all the way to August 29th, which is today. And this is our daily seismic energy release measured in gigawatt hours. We see our logarithmic scale there. And this is across time, as you can see. This is by month, right? April, May, June, so on and so forth. Up top, we have our daily weighted average earthquake depth. Same deal as last time, but this time for all of 2025. So this is January right here, and then off to the side there, we have nearly the beginning of September. Let's start with our big earthquakes. Here's our 7.6, which was southwest of the Cayman Islands. Here's our 7.7 in Burma and Thailand, or otherwise like Myanmar. And there's a lot of other earthquakes, that high magnitude earthquakes that occurred around there. But if we're talking log scale, it's really only the magnitude 7s that pop up. And then we see over here our 7.3 in Alaska, 7.4 Kamchatka, our 8.8 in Kamchatka right there. And then our 7.5 recently in Drake Passage. Quite a lot of earthquake activity. Actually, this is the 6th most active year for seismic activity on record because of this magnitude 8.8 in Kamchatka. Here are big earthquakes. Let me grab a guide in Photoshop, okay? So you can see kind of this line there, okay? So this connects our two graphs together. Look here. Here we have this big increase in the daily weighted average depth. And then we see about 10 days later, no, about 2 weeks later, about half a month later, we get our 7.6 in the Caribbean. Again, this is all looking at a global scale. Then we go forward, we get another big increase in the daily weighted average depth. And look, it's about 2 weeks before that 7.7 Burma, Thailand earthquake right there. Then we go forward again. Here's our next big increase in the daily weighted average earthquake depth. And then if we go forward, oh, look, again, about 2 weeks later, we get a big magnitude 7+ earthquake. We go here, we get a huge spike. And this is where things get interesting. Then everything goes normal all the way up until this big burst of activity that we've had here, which we were talking about forecasting on the channel for a few months, right? So during this whole time frame, we were on the channel saying, hey guys, we likely have something big coming. And well, it did. It lined up, the biggest being that magnitude 8.8. But you'll notice that we had all these deep earthquakes being released around these big earthquakes, deep earthquake energy being released around these big earthquakes. And then as this cooled off, as that cooled off, everything basically stayed normal. Now we're in another wave of deep earthquake activity. This is a little bump right there. 2 days back to back makes that a bit more notable than these individual ones that spiked up to the same zone of about 150 kilometers in depth. But here we have a notable bump right there. This is all right around this huge increase in activity. 7.3 Alaska, 7.4 Kamchatka, 8.8 Kamchatka. Look how much more energy that released compared to all these others. This is, again, logarithmic scale, so 10x jumps. Then we go forward, and here's our most recent increase in deep earthquake activity at a global scale, following right after this 7.5. And so there seems to be this relationship to them. And it seems that in general, well, it's a little bit of a chicken and egg scenario, but it looks like you get the deep earthquake activity and then the big earthquake follows. So there was a little bit of a change in that relationship, it looks like right here. But in general, now that we're seeing this go up again, I think we're likely to have more big earthquakes manifest, because as you have activity in the depths of the earth, this microwave radiation, solar flux coming in from the sun, heating up the deep earth, causing it to expand, thermal expansion, just like a microwave. You turn on a microwave, it heats up whatever's in there. That's thermal radiation that causes expansion. Then as you get that expansion wave to go out, eventually that should trigger some earthquakes at the surface, because that increased stress on those critically stressed faults will cause them to rupture. Then you can add in space weather influences. So let's check that out now. Here we have our data for 2025, but this is daily seismic energy release and our solar wind data. Here we have our USGS data, magnitude 4.5 earthquakes or greater for January 1st to the 29th of August. Same plot, just different aspect ratio. Same Y scale, logarithmic, etc. Here we have our solar wind data as observed at the L1 Lagrange point by NOAA. And so we have our velocity down here, we have our density, we have our solar sector that's in, whether it's away or towards, so positive or negative. And then we have our interplanetary magnetic field right there. Let us grab this guide again to kind of look at this. You'll notice a few areas where we have these big earthquakes, of course, right? Here's the 7.7, here's the 8.8. I want you to specifically focus on the density here. When the density gets very low, that's like down around 1 particle per cubic centimeter, or even down to like 0.1 particle per cubic centimeter. So normally it's hovering around 5 or 10. So going from, let's say, 10 to 1 is a 10 times decrease, right? It's really decreasing. Now it's 10 times less particles per cubic centimeter of space. This is in advance of the Earth, 1% of the distance from the Earth to the Sun. If it goes down to 0.1, that's from a difference of 10, that's a 100 times decrease. So a significant change in the particulate concentration and population in the solar wind density around the Earth. Well, you'll notice that we get these drops in the solar wind density right around the time that we get these big earthquakes, usually right before. Specifically here also, we see these drops in the solar wind density. I can grab that guide and kind of line it up for you. So here we get these drops right there, kind of some chop, but it drops down. And then look right there, we're right at a solar wind density low with that 7.6 Cayman Islands. And then we go forward, density is basically fine, earthquake activity is normal. And then we go and we have this big drop in the density because of these co-rotating interaction regions in these coronal hole high-speed streams. We have a second big drop in the density after that. And look at how we had a really big increase in global seismic energy release here back at the end of March, beginning of April. We go forward and we see, some of it doesn't perfectly line up. For example, this earthquake there, the 7.4 Drake Passage. It's kind of connected to a lower density, but it's still kind of within range of normal. But then look here, we actually get this zone where we really don't get much low density solar wind, only like a little spot right there. But in general, it stays elevated. and look at our earthquake activity. It stays totally normal. So as that solar wind density stays elevated, earthquake activity, at least for 2025, has been basically normal. Then we get this big drop here. Let me move to the other side. Then we get this big drop here from some more co-rotating interaction regions in these coronal hole high-speed streams. We see a triple impact there and then a fourth one that followed, creating this density anomaly in the solar wind. And that's when we had this big wave of seismic energy culminating with that magnitude 8.8. So there's a pretty clear correlation between the solar wind density and global seismic energy release. I think that's a better correlation than the solar wind velocity, because you do see other high-speed stream impacts, or like, for example, fast coronal mass ejection impacts that raise up the velocity that don't trigger earthquake activity. It really seems to be the solar wind density. So that is very, very interesting. And I think what that's indicating is that we have some more significant seismic activity headed our way, because we had these coronal holes still active on the sun. We have a big one right now active on the far side. It will be rotating into view for its 13th rotation shortly. So probably about 2 weeks, it'll be in that geoeffective position. It should be starting to rotate into view any moment now. Let us look at our solar radio flux, because I haven't actually showed you the data for it yet. So here we have that, and this is basically just a graphic of what's recorded by NOAA, provided by VK3FS. I've put a link to this and other data that I use in the video description. Here we have our 10.7 centimeter or 2800 gigahertz or 2800 megahertz solar radio flux. This is one specific frequency wavelength of light that the sun emits, and it's the main one used to track solar radio flux variations from the sun. And it goes up during solar maximum, it goes down during solar minimum. It's a really good gauge of solar activity, probably more so than sunspots. We see that going all the way back to July 19th here. This is the right side. July is the right side. Our most recent data in August is the left side. It's a little backwards. Just keep that in mind. We see that we are basically hovering around 140 and actually trending down. Then we really dipped down to under 120 here at the beginning of August, and now we're nearly 240. I think the values for today are about 225. So that is tremendous. We've had this huge increase in solar radio flux, and we don't know when this wave will go back down. Eventually during solar minimum, these values will be even down around like 70 or 50 or so. But this wave right there could continue for a while because of these sunspots that we have on the Earth facing side of the sun. Let's check those out. We can go to our earthevolution.com/energy-analytics portal. This is on the website. You can also get right to the Earth Evolution store right from there. So I can actually click that really quick. Here's where all the products are. Some of them I mentioned at the beginning of the live stream. The Pahoa shirt that I'm wearing right there. The new rebranded Hermes Magic Boots at a new lower price. They're now been slashed in price. That's on the website. But we can go back to our live data by clicking right there. Here we see our Schumann resonances. There is right now thunderstorm activity in Tomsk causing that. We see some of our global seismic activity provided by volcano discovery, our radiation belts, our aurora. We see our views of the sun here, and we can also see our sunspots. Look at this, guys. This is wild. Our sunspots, both intensitygram and magnetogram views. So let's check out the growth of these sunspots on the Earth-facing side, because it has been significant. Look at 4197 there, getting bigger day by day. So this intermediate zone is filling in. This sunspot core is also getting bigger. 4191 right there. 4199 has been quite active. This guy has been growing. Everything on the sun has been growing. We have new spots rotating in over the next few days as well. So when this gets to the limb in about 2 days, our sunspot number is going to be very, very high. We're already over 200. We may even get to like 220, maybe 230 as these ones rotate in, and we're not losing anything for the next couple days. And this is continuing to grow. So this is one of the reasons we're getting this increased solar flux. So you don't even necessarily need solar flares for this to have an effect on the Earth. The other thing to keep in mind with these sunspots is each one is a magnetic vortex. Like a sunspot literally is a depression in the sun, if you're looking through a telescope at a sunspot right on the limb, you'll actually see the very tiny, basically indent that it has in the surface of the sun. It's a hole in the sun. It literally is a depression in the surface of the sun that's darker, that has different plasma properties to it. Very strong magnetic fields. So they actually create these magnetic vortices because the magnetic field of the sun normally is like 1 Gauss, 0.5 Gauss in the polar regions. These can be like 2, 3, 4,000 Gauss in strength. So really powerful magnetic vortices that effectively connect out with the magnetic field into interplanetary space. When you have big sunspots Earth facing, they are connecting to some degree with the Earth. That is just undeniable. That's just the physics of electromagnetism. That magnetic field extends out. And then the solar wind magnetic field sits on top of that, okay? So we have these big sunspots pumping out a lot of flux, and just my intuition is telling me that 4197 there is going to survive for a while. I think it's going to make multiple rotations like 3664 did back last year in March and April and May. If you remember that, when we had that big G5 storm, May 10th to the 12th, I think this is going to be similar. I think we're going to be seeing these sunspots for the remainder of 2025, basically. Maybe not this one particular all the way to the end, but I think we're going to see elevated activity for the rest of 2025, and I think we're going to start dipping down in the beginning of 2026. We can check out our magnetogram views to see the magnetic field of these sunspots, how they've been growing and evolving. This is going to load, and here we go. So look at how the magnetic field complexity, the shear that's building in 4197. This one getting really, really big as well. A lot of these have been flaring sympathetically together too, if we're talking about the risk of solar flares and solar storm launches. If you see one start to flare a lot, that can mean that others are going to start to join in, because that's what we've been seeing over the past few days. But 4197, they're getting really close to Earth center indirect, and definitely the one to watch. So that is really, really wild. And one of the reasons this solar radial flux is increasing, it's just simply because of these sunspots. Here we have our sunspot numbers. And this is our estimated sunspot number for here we have our estimated sunspot number for August thus far, and then our confirmed number for July. And so we see our average there getting up to about 140. And so I think we're going to close the month of August out with an average sunspot number of 140, which is quite a big jump over what we closed in at in May, which was 79. So we had a huge drop in May, anomalously low. And now we're starting to climb back out of that. And just look at this wave right there, right? Bottom and really charged up. It looks like we're on an overall increasing wave there. Though we are getting closer and closer day by day to the descending phase and eventually solar minimum. So keep that in mind. This isn't going to be a sustainable increase for the next 10 years or anything. That would have to break our complete understanding of what the sun does. But I think 2026 is when we're really going to enter into the descending phase. I think 2025 still has a lot of room to go. We can see our solar radial flux here across other wavelengths, not just 2800 megahertz or 2.8 gigahertz or that 10.7 centimeter. They're all the same thing. We can see them across these other wavelengths here. This goes back to the 23rd, okay? So you have right here our 2800 megahertz solar flux, but we also basically 5 gigahertz, 8.8 gigahertz, 15.4 gigahertz, also 245 megahertz, 410 megahertz, 610. I also recently reported on how we've been getting a lot of solar flux in that like 15 to 50 hertz, 15 to 50 megahertz zone. A lot of type 2 solar radio bursts have been appearing there, which is anomalous. So we've been also having those frequencies hit the Earth. Those will penetrate even deeper down, because the higher you go in frequency, the more likely it will get absorbed closer to the surface or even in the atmosphere. So, but in general though, check out this wave. Going back to the 23rd of August, here let's look at our 15.4 gigahertz. It was 316 solar flux units. And then look how quickly it went to 559, 500, dipped down a little bit to 450. But in general now, it's in that 550 plus range, even going to 583 there. It's a very high vibrational wavelength of light, though it's still in the radio frequency part of the light spectrum. We see these other frequencies too. Again, not just 2.8 gigahertz. They all have been going up over the past 2 weeks. So when I show you this plot here by VK3FS, all of them dipped down. And now they're all charging up dramatically. We've nearly, actually going from here, we have doubled in our solar radio flux. So in like 10 days, we've gone up a tremendous amount in our solar radio flux. And that is going to have an impact on the Earth, and therefore I think earthquakes. We can look at our latest earthquakes. Just a quick update here. Let me refresh it. Then we'll do our question and answer. So to do that, type @Stefan Burns. Super thanks questions. We'll get all of them will get answered, but I'll take some from the regular audience first as well. We just had 2 earthquakes in Japan back to back, which is interesting. Magnitude 5 and a 5.5. So 5.5 right there most recently, and a 5.5 there, both of them at the same depth, 44 kilometers. So that's interesting. It just occurred. I want to point out here, we have all our earthquakes off the coast of Kamchatka because of that megaquake that was on July 29th, 2025. When you have a really big earthquake, you create an earthquake shadow, and it'll take stress off of its epicenter location and the areas immediately adjacent to it. So we're seeing a whole bunch of earthquake activity here, indicating that's in the earthquake shadow. So this area is unlikely to rupture with a big earthquake in the near future, like years or decades out, because a lot of that energy has been released. But this right here, see where the earthquakes stop? This has all actually been loaded with more energy, because this is not in the shadow. This is outside the shadow. And an earthquake releases seismic energy, which propagates out, and some of it gets absorbed into faults and increases our critical stress. So this whole area has been super loaded up with energy since that megaquake a month ago. And now we are seeing some intermediate depth earthquakes hit Japan today, magnitude 5 and a 5.5 back to back within 22 minutes of each other and at the same depth. So clearly connected to each other, but there is quite a bit of distance in between them. That's about, 100 kilometers or so. But in general, over the past week, we haven't had much activity. I'm already on the past 7 days. Let's go here. Largest magnitude, 6.1 as part of this swarm. There, Kuril Islands, also a magnitude 6 there, also part of that swarm. So we've only had low magnitude 6s for the past week, and only 3 of them, also this magnitude 6 here, El Salvador. But everything else has been muted. We did have this deep 5.9, and that was yesterday. Also a magnitude 5.1 nearby, also fairly deep, 82.7 kilometers. That 5.9 there is 133.7 kilometers. But if you just kind of like look through our recent record, again, you'll see that earthquake depth. So 10 kilometers is like the default value that they use, and the depth is not on average 10, it's probably more like 20 or 30 or so. But you'll notice a lot outside that range. Even just recently, there's 100 kilometers, here's 260 kilometers in, what is this, Panama? No, in Argentina. And so there's just been a lot of deep earthquakes. We're seeing that line up perfectly with this increase in solar radio flux. We got these big sunspots on the sun right now, which could give us some really big solar activity. We have this interstellar object, 3I Atlas, zooming through the solar system at incredible speed. It has a dusty plasma gas coma surrounding it that's been estimated to be about half the size of the sun, which is tremendous. So we have a whole bunch of very interesting, unique things happening at this moment in time, and I'll keep you up to date every step of the way with what is happening if you subscribe to the channel. I've been your host, Stefan Burns. Thank you all so much for watching. That is it for the report. We will do our question and answer now. So if you have a question, type @Stefan Burns. I'll answer that. Any question attached to a super thanks, I will answer as well. I hope I didn't miss any during the broadcast because I can only scroll so far up I'm seeing right now. So you can always ask it again. And a question from Dillard is, will coronal mass ejections shoot towards the Earth when 3I Atlas is near its perihelion, its closest approach to the sun? And I think the answer to that is yes. I personally am kind of placing my bets on that outcome, but we don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. I think there will be big solar activity. I guess the bigger question is, will it go towards the Earth or not? Because I think undoubtedly that perihelion approach of 3i Atlas will create some really big solar flares, or at least they'll line up together through some mechanisms that we kind of understand and also don't understand, or don't even know. We don't know, right? And I could be wrong. We'll just have to wait and see. But the bigger question, where I have more uncertainty, is will it be Earth directed or not? That's the unknown. Which planet or object will the sun decide to load up with energy? That's kind of the question I have. And then we have a question from TKB. Will the T be in stock soon? Yeah, it is in stock. You have to go to earthevolution.com and not Wild Free Organic. So if you go to earthevolution.com/store, you'll see all the tea blends are in stock. All organic herbal tea blends, 4 ounces loose leaf, the best stuff that you can buy. So yeah, they are in stock right now. And you can just go to earthevolution.com to get those. From Quantum asking, has anyone correlated the relationship between seismic activity and solar activity in the Vedic Yuga cycles as presented by various Indian mystics? No, that'd be interesting to do, but our record of solar activity our record of seismic activity is really lacking if you go far back in time. It's certainly not comprehensive. We have a better idea of solar activity trends going back hundreds or thousands of years through reconstructions and tree ring data and isotope data like beryllium and carbon and more. But that's still also a lot of ambiguity because it depends on the cosmic flux environment and also depends on Earth's magnetic field and how it's modulating that. But you could look at that and draw some very preliminary correlations between the Yuga cycles and solar activity. And I'd recommend that someone do that. I'll probably look into that at some point. It's a good idea, but I haven't done it yet. And so we have a question from a texter saying, I love your channel. Are you keeping a watch on Yellowstone? Looks like something's about to happen there. Love and peace from Bahrain. Well, hello and welcome. And yeah, I'm keeping my eye on Yellowstone. There's a lot of really bad fake news coming out on Yellowstone. If you haven't noticed on YouTube, there's just been this explosion of AI videos where they take some clips of like a news broadcaster and then they add in a whole bunch of AI garbage and they just make up stuff, and they're releasing them every single day. So because they get limited reach, so it only spikes up for like maybe 12 hours in views, and then it just completely flatlines. So you won't find it unless you go to that channel, you know the channel, whatever. So they're releasing the same like video on Yellowstone's about to erupt or Mount Etna explosion every single day. And if you don't know what you're looking at or you're new to this, it can be confusing and convincing. So yeah, I'm watching Yellowstone. Everything looks normal there as far as I can tell, but there is a lot of this AI garbage coming out, which is making people think that it's like imminently about to erupt. If we start to see some big changes there, seismically, hydrothermally, whatever, I will let you know. But as of right now, everything seems to look fine. Question from Jack about 3i Atlas. Is it stealing our sun's energy? No, I think the sun is just energizing the... I think it's just energizing whatever this object is because of photoionization and also particle ionization. And so it's going to expand its dusty plasma coma as a result and start interacting with the electromagnetic circuit of the solar system more and more. Doing a lot of research into this. It's not bad, it's not good, it's just a change. It's just different. It's very interesting that it has a composition very similar to that of Mars in terms of its gas composition. And I don't know, my intuition's telling me that 3i Atlas and Mars are like somehow connected or resonant in some way. Though I really can't say more than that because it's just intuition and speculation. Do I feel 3i Atlas could harm the Earth? I don't get that feeling. I think it's actually coming in with like interstellar information that will help level us up. But again, this is all just intuition and kind of like my own feeling into it. I've been connecting very strongly to 3i Atlas because of the videos I've been producing, the research I've been doing. I don't get It's strange and unusual, and that can be frightening, but I don't get any sense that it's doing anything malevolently. I think it's here to increase our consciousness to a higher awareness and to give us awareness of interstellar dynamics and like exopolitics and stuff. And one from Golden Age, do you think Atlas is wormwood? I have been thinking on that too. I'll probably release a members only video, but just to quickly give you that point, my interpretation, I have not read the Bible completely. I've only read bits, but my interpretation, based off of just my experience and other, spiritual wisdom, is that the Bible is really a roadmap to Christ consciousness. And Christ is a figure exemplified Christ consciousness, which is self-actualized consciousness, awareness of the unity of God and everything. Did Christ exist? Yes, but I'm not getting into that. I think this idea of wormwood is really, again, my interpretation, okay, is really maybe a recognition of the fact that parasites don't want you to be Christ conscious, right? They want to steal your energy and direct your consciousness. We know that the microbiome can influence your behavior and actions through the vagus nerve, and they can be, really deeply embedded. Parasites can be anywhere in your body. They can even be in your brain. So wormwood is the herb that is renowned for use in treating parasites, right? And I think we live on a planet that is riddled with parasites. Look at our elite class. It's like 75% of the money is controlled by the top 1% or something like that. It's ridiculous. So we have this parasite problem on the planet, and 3i Atlas coming in with interstellar energy and information. I think you could interpret that as wormwood if we look at it from like a herbalistic viewpoint. And once you liberate yourself of that, then all of a sudden consciousness rises to the surface. You start realizing, oh, that decision I made yesterday, that wasn't me. Like, I wouldn't normally reach for the cookies. It was this thing maybe, or things inside me saying, hey, give us that sugar through the vagus nerve. So this is just like kind of a more modern understanding. Take that for what it will. That's been what's been kind of resonating with me. And Tessa is saying, can you mention your websites really quick? Yeah, again, it is earthevolution.com. So it's right here on the page, earthevolution.com. This is the energy portal, the energy analytics portal, but there's also the store, and that's just /store. All the products, tea blends, merch, shirts, crystals, books, shoes, and more are there. Artwork as well from my dad. These are canvas prints of his natural soil pigment art. They're really quite amazing. They have great feng shui and energy. I recommend you get one and put it in your office. It can help ground yourself in these energies. And see my super chat. Yeah, I responded to that. Oh, but there's a new one maybe. When the gods come back, we are going to be in trouble for not taking care of the earth. I think we just have to be very mindful of that. Again, if you're not conscious, you're going to do things that don't behoove you or behoove the others around you or the consciousness around you. And so that's another thing. A parasite, by definition, is only interested in itself and it will take your resources. It's not even mutualistic, which is like it kind of works with you, but it's also, it's not symbiotic, but it's not pathogenic. A parasite only harms and hurts you. So we have a big parasite problem on this planet. It's something I've been connecting to in a way that I wasn't really expecting, but I'll take it in because it's clearly what kind of God is telling me to look into more. So that is definitely a dynamic here. And I think 3i Atlas from an interstellar consciousness perspective is giving us that heads up, because if we're not united together, we're easy to break apart and divide and conquer. And there are interstellar dynamics at play that we need to like evolve on. Like if all of a sudden something big headed our way, would we be able to deflect that asteroid, or some fleet of starships is coming in? Would we be able to meet them halfway and be like, hey, this is where you stop? No, they could come straight in and have no problem. So they sound like sci-fi ideas, but we're increasingly entering into that reality. So we need to be aware of this. Yeah, so will 3i Atlas get destroyed by the asteroid belt? No, the asteroid belt is very unlikely. The asteroid belt is very, very sparse, actually. There's a lot of asteroids, but they're spread out quite a ways. I think the average distance is like 1 million kilometers in between them, something like that. So the chance of it hitting an asteroid is very, very low. And is there a possibility from Leia? Is there a possibility the sun's magnetism changes the orbit of 3I Atlas enough for an impact with the sun? It's maybe possible, but I think 3I Atlas, the object itself, has enough mass that that's not going to happen. It has, its perihelion is like pretty far out. It's out just within the orbit of Mars, so it's not that close. It would have to go through some pretty dramatic orbital changes for it to impact the sun or to impact any of the other planets. It has a close flyby with Mars and Jupiter, but it will still, regardless of the fact that it's already getting like within 0.2 AU of Mars, it's going to have to do some significant orbital trajectory change and velocity change for an impact to happen. I'm going to be releasing a video on that soon. Any chance that another galaxy is responsible for Atlas and other incoming rocks in the next few weeks? Possible. So 3I Atlas is kind of zooming in from Sagittarius, the constellation Sagittarius, which is where you have the center of the galaxy from our perspective. So it appears it's coming from the center of our galaxy, or at least closer to the center, but it could be intergalactic. We really don't know. We just know it's coming in fast and at a hyperbolic trajectory. It could have been somehow maybe launched from the Oort cloud. Again, you don't know at all anything about this from the moment before you first observed it. So we have our first measurements early July. Everything before that is conjecture. We were just hoping to understand, but we don't know. You could, let's say it is some sort of alien craft or whatever, right? Or technological craft. It could have accelerated. Now, to get to 61 kilometers per second is tremendous, but maybe it was stationary in the Oort cloud and then accelerated. We don't know. We don't know what the deal is with it. We just know it's coming in fast and furious. And we're glad it's not on a collision course with Earth at this moment in time. And yeah, it's from the same area roughly as the WOW signal, which was something that we received, which seemed alien back in the 70s, I believe. So there's people have, solved the WOW signal, and, there's people have answers to everything. I just remain open-minded, and, we really don't know what's out there. And that's why we need to send a lot more probes. Like, I'll finish by just saying, we had Voyager 1, Voyager 2, right? We launched these out. Voyager 1 checked out Jupiter and Saturn. Voyager 2 checked out Uranus and Neptune. Now they're both outside the heliosphere, but they're only still, within they're less than 200 astronomical units away from the sun. We should have kept building them. We had the design. They had the instruments. We should have done it like an iPhone, right? Where you have the first one, that's Voyager 1. Voyager 2, Model 3, Model 4, Model 5 Max. We should have kept sending these Voyager probes literally everywhere so we could better understand what was happening in our area. But we're pretty much blind, right? We have new telescope observatories and arrays that help us see these things flying in. So we have better detection now than we ever have been. But in general, we are very blind with what is happening out there, both from an observational perspective, in situ measurements of interplanetary space, interstellar space, but also just what's actually cruising around in our neighborhood. There's a lot of things that we're not picking up. There could be something even bigger than 3I Atlas right now zooming through that perhaps we don't catch until 6 months from now. Like what happened with the Muamua. We didn't see a Muamua until it was already past its perihelion and flying out. So that was the first interstellar object, observed in 2017. And thank you, James is saying thank you for what you do for our planetary community. The reason people ask you about your orientation is because you're an attractive guy. All right, well, thank you so much, James. And yeah, happy to be here to help people understand what's happening with the Earth, the sun, the cosmos as best as possible. I just in general have a curious, open mind. Everything that I present is, my thoughts, opinions, and beliefs. But I do my best to back it with data, but I don't let data be the limiting factor, because science is always playing catch up to reality. And I'm also not interested in what you call scientism, which is a religion, not actual science. So we'll close out with a 304 angstrom view right here. We see a big plasma filament launch off there at the beginning of this video, just about probably 48 or 36 hours ago. Check this out, not Earth directed, but a nice plasma filament launch there. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you everyone for your super thanks, for your support, and for joining in on the channel. More updates on 3i Atlas coming. I'm doing the research, some really exciting videos I'll be releasing on that soon. I'll keep you up to date with the Earth, the Sun. Make sure that you ground yourself, do earthing and grounding. Make sure you eat good, clean food, whole foods. Drink spring water, breathe fresh air, get sunlight on your skin. All of these things will be tremendously useful as this wave of increased energy continues to roll through, because in general it activates your metabolism, it can stoke inflammation, but on the flip side, if you use these energies and kind of harness them, you can really pour that into any creative endeavors you have, or athletic pursuits or exercise, and actually benefit from this increased activity. That's what I've noticed. It's a wake-up call for you to really practice consciousness. Not just like one moment, but every single moment to be conscious. And when you do that, everything changes. Consciousness is a choice. Free will and consciousness are combined together. If you're not exerting your free will, you're not conscious. And so there's times where, maybe you dip into an unconscious state where you're just kind of going by behavior, but we always strive to be more and more conscious. So I recommend that you do all these things that can help. Maybe do a detox. Fasting is tremendously beneficial. Check in with your holistic wellness doc if you need to for any of this stuff. But the basics of drinking good, clean spring water, breathing fresh air, and eating whole, natural foods will serve you well. Good sleep, good music, have fun, laugh, be joyful, spread that outwards to others, do a good deed every single day, only do good. These are wise things to do in my opinion. So thank you all so much, wishing all of you well, and I'll see you all very, very soon.